Hello again. I've just got out of the car. It's been quite a drive from Glastonbury, but stage 6 from King's Lynn to Great Yarmouth promises to be something different. It's pan-flat, windy, and a breath of fresh air after all the ups and downs of the tour so far. Dartmoor was first up yesterday as the race rolled out of the southwest and started heading for home. Bradley Wiggins, Richie Porte and Dan Martin among a number of riders, all in an attacking frame of mind. Eventually a break got established despite the best attempts of a sheep. Marco Frapporti broke clear of Dan Martin as Glastonbury neared. And with Bradley Wiggins in pursuit, the finish line and the Colnago rider won.
Here he comes then, Marco Frapporti. He's going to win stage 5 of the Tour of Britain.
OK, Dean Downing, so the big, perhaps the only question is, what can anybody do about the yellow jersey that belongs to Michael Albertini? Is it all over?
I don't think so, but Michael Albertini's had a hard day. I hope he's had a better sleep, and he's only got 14 riders with him now, so they'll be fighting to hang on to it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Colombia are markedly weaker than they were a few stages ago, and there are plenty of riders and teams still willing and able to throw down a challenge, aren't there?
Yeah, there's some big teams that we've not seen anything from in this Tour of Britain. But today's billed as an easy stage, but it's not that at all. It's 190 kilometres. It's flat and it's quite windy. So here today.
Very exposed coastline. Anybody who's been on holiday up here will know that even when it's not windy, it's kind of windy sometimes. Echelon riding, that might be a feature of today's race. Tell us what that means, Dean.
Yeah, definitely. Echelons. It's when it's windy, you get the crosswinds. Then the riders kind of fan out across the road in a diagonal fashion. The road is only so wide, so the last rider within that echelon is going to be having to fight really hard into the crosswind, and that creates a split when the rider comes to the opposite side of the road, and the race is blown apart then.
And there's one team on this Tour of Britain who specialises in getting to the front, riding echelon and ripping a race apart, and that's Team Cervelo, isn't it?
Yeah, Team Cervelo was created a few years ago, and one of their first races was the Tour of Qatar, and they did exactly that. They saw the wind coming, and they ripped it up every day, and they had a great race there. So maybe we're going to see them come to the front of this race today. Very
interesting stuff. So that's how it might happen. Here is where it might happen. Stage 6 pops in on the Sandringham stage before hitting the North Norfolk coast and doing battle with the headwinds, which generally blow sand in your sandwiches at this time of year. Don't be fooled by the King of the Mountain markers though. This first ever visit to the Fens is pan-flat and furiously fast. It's the longest stage of the tour, by the way, at 190 kilometres. Welcome to a land so marvellously low that it shouldn't really be land at all, and once upon a time it wasn't. Get yourself a head of steam and a cheeky shot of Sandringham, which is probably worth a second look, before battling the winds all the way to Great Yarmouth. OK, it's a long, hard day in the saddle. Here's Alan and Andy, of course, the veterans of 7 Tours of Britain, at the start and the finish of every single one.
Yep.
In your tiger skin hats, a visible presence on the Tour of Britain, legends of the game, just like these two gentlemen, Hugh Porter and Graham Jones.
Well, massive crowds have turned out here again at the start of stage 6 of the Tour of Britain, and the riders will be pedalling from King's Lynn to Great Yarmouth, a distance of 118 miles, and this is the longest stage of the Tour. And the action has swung right over to the east coast, a new hunting ground in the history of the Tour. After all the hard climbs in the southwest, now it's the flatlands that they've got to negotiate, and quite often when they're racing on territory such as this, crosswinds can play a havoc. What were your thoughts when you made the plans for this stage, Graham?
Well, I think as much as anything, probably we needed a couple of stages somewhere in the race that were going to suit the sprinters. But I have a feeling today, with the strong winds that's blowing, that we might actually see the echelons come into it, the strong side winds. It is a very windy day. We go along the North Norfolk coast for quite some time before we eventually turn back inland towards Norwich before heading out through the Norfolk Broads to Great Yarmouth.
Well, there's Steve Cummings at the back, and we got a glimpse a little earlier on of the yellow jersey, Michael Albertini, talking to one of the riders from the opposing teams. They're all happy at the moment, but once that flag drops, then the speed will be high, and of course there'll be no quarter given. Albacini's advantage 128 over Richie Port of Saxo Bank, and Borut Bozic of the Vakon Soleil team at 132. Johnny Hoogland in 5th position, also of the Vakon Soleil team. So they are looking pretty good. There is Cummings in the background, and there's the national champion, Geraint Thomas. Now then, beginning to weave their way through the glorious countryside here, approaching the first intermediate sprint of the day, and that's going to come in Sandringham.
Yeah, we took it right through the heart of the estate. It's lovely, probably one of the most picturesque sprints we've got on the whole tour this year. So, but it's very early days, and I think we've got a fairly strong tailwind early on, so it should be quite a fast sprint.
And that first sprint comes after just 4.5 miles. The familiar colours on the front of the Vakon Soleil team, and the reason for that is, of course, they've got the overall lead in that competition, and that is Michael Golas. Had a cracking day yesterday, and that's when they stole the lead away from Richie Port, the Aussie on the Saxo Bank squad, who'd been going well. That gives you an idea of just how fast the speed is at the back, Graham. You could see the high revs, but it's sky on the front at the moment, as the riders now really beginning to turn the screw here into the closing meters as they approach the line for this, the first intermediate sprint of the day. Points on the line will be 5, second 3, third 2, and 1 for the fourth. And this is a really big lead out, and it's the riders from Vakon Soleil that did the work there. Johnny Hoogland and Michael Golas were the men right at the head of the field. There it is, confirmed. So that's more points for Golas, who is the overall leader of that competition. Well, one intermediate sprint behind them, and the field moving very, very quickly. We're getting reports here, Graham, that they're motoring at something like 30 miles per hour. So instead of getting the crosswind, they're getting a favourable wind.
Yes, they are, and this may well prove favourable for the sprinters today. It's going to be probably very difficult to split the race up, but what we will see is, I think, a high-tempo race right the way through.
You are right. When they're travelling at such a high tempo as that, it's very difficult to jump clear. But it is beginning to break up a little bit here as they're on the foot slopes of the first incline of the day, and that's Burnham Deepdale. It's a third category climb, so really this is nothing to test the climbers compared to what they have been over.
No, certainly every day we've had hills so far on the race, and a lot tougher than this. Is just a sort of long dragged 2 stages. In fact, there's a little bit of a descent in the middle before it just drags up to the finish.
Well, Johnny Hoogland is the current leader in that competition. He's got 51 points to his credit. He leads Richie Port, the Australian, by 6, so we can expect Hoogland to be somewhere in the mix here. As we look down, it's the black jersey actually of the Cervelo rider, and there's also a rider on the far side from Team Sky. At the moment, they're not too eager to try and accelerate here. As a matter of interest, talking about acceleration, the speed of the race so far has been 25 miles per hour. And they've covered 492 since the flag dropped in Rochdale. So it's been pretty fast, Graham.
Considering the terrain that we've had, especially over the last 3 days, that's a phenomenal speed, or an average speed, and it just goes to show how much they've been racing very hard.
Caught a glimpse of Geraint Thomas, the British national champion, at the back, but it's Vakon Soleil at the front, and that doesn't come as any surprise at all, because they will be trying to add more points to the collection they already have. Hoogland, as I mentioned earlier, the current leader. They've had a good tour, haven't they? And they're so well placed overall. They've got 3rd, 5th, and those two, Bozic in 3rd and Hoogland in 5th, are men that could play off each other in the overall situation.
Yeah, every year they've come and always been competitive, always been very aggressive every day. It's a great little team.
We've got Pim Lighet in the same squad, who's the Dutch national champion. I'm not quite sure if that's him here trying to go away, but 2 riders with a slender advantage, about 30 metres here as they weave their way through the countryside towards the top of Burnham Deepdale.
Yeah, they've just done that little bit of a descent in the middle, and then it just starts to climb again here. And
then, of course, the race will sort of traverse parallel the Norfolk coast.
Yeah, some fantastic coastline, lots of wildlife, and lots of wind farms out in the sea.
And of course, this is an area that we don't often come to, so it does offer very good racing country. Geraint Thomas at the moment still clinging to the tail of the field. Not the best place to be if a crosswind situation suddenly developed.
It isn't, and that's the thing on this sort of course. It does, although at the moment they are going fairly much along the coastline. Eventually the race will turn inland and it does start to switch around a little bit, so it's all about staying fairly near the front. There are some small roads.
There we are, they've just crossed the top of the climb. No change, it was the same two. It was Pim Leeghaart, the Dutch champion, that was over there first. Then it was Peter van Speebroek and Jeremy Hunt, the British sprinter, coming over in third spot.
Welcome back. The race passed through the second sprint at Wells with Sky's Greg Henderson picking up 3 very valuable seconds time bonus. And as we pick up the action, 2 riders have just attacked on the approach to the second King of the Mountains.
Well, it's good, isn't it, to see Jeremy Hunt here in the mix. And of course he's a big sprinter, Jeremy Hunt, and he'll be off to Australia to help Cavendish in his quest to try and win the world title. The other member of that squad, of course, will be David Miller. But he's got Cameron Meyer with him, the talented young Australian.
Yeah, it's good to see Jeremy Hunt getting in some of the moves and trying to get away in a breakaway.
Well, Meyer just 22 years of age, and of course Jeremy Hunt now in his mid-30s, a very, very experienced professional. And he's the kind of guy who would figure very strongly in the sprint today in Great Yarmouth. It's a long, long straight, and of course if he can get the good lead out, and he's got the sprinting legs with him, he's one of the men that could be in the mix. And of course Jeremy Hunt rode his first Tour de France this year at the age of 36.
Yeah, he waited a long time for the opportunity, didn't he? I think I remember him saying that he was expected, or he could have ridden it many years ago with Bonesto, but decided to wait another year, and then unfortunately never got the chance until now.
Well, I'm pleased that he has had the opportunity, because otherwise he would have regretted that when he eventually hung his wheels up. Well, he saw the gap, 18 seconds.
Yeah, it's only a small gap at the moment, and as you can see, the peloton still not prepared to let this breakaway go. Just 2 men, it's quite difficult to get to maintain this gap.
And the other point we need to make, of course, is the fact that the wind is favourable. Trying to get clear and maintain a lead is difficult.
Geraint Thomas near the back of the peloton.
There's Jeremy Hunt then on the right, and it looks as though Meyer's actually jumping away from him here. Well, that's a surprise. Jeremy Hunt has gone away with the Australian, and now he's beginning to lose ground, and it's really only a ripple.
Yes, it's not. We're not even on the climb yet, so it's just a bit of a drag, and surprised to see him lose the wheel of Cameron Meyer there.
Or do you think he may have had an instruction that to go back to the field?
Yeah, it could be. He could have thought the chase was full on behind. Maybe he thought that this breakaway wasn't going to succeed, and thought it's a waste of effort.
Yeah, so just got another glimpse there of Geraint Thomas towards the middle of the peloton, but Meyer now once again in full flight. He had a go like this, didn't he, down in the stage to Swansea. Now what's happening here with Geraint Thomas? He's distanced by a few metres. Is he having a difficult day?
It could be. I think I heard that he had been back to the race doctor's car.
And of course there has been a bug floating around, hasn't it? The team with the leader, and that of course is HTC Colombia. They've had some stomach problems.
Yeah, they got through yesterday, which is the day that they really had the problem. I think Albacina, from what I heard, been sick through the night, but they lost 1 rider, of course, but they've still got 3 riders, and it looks like they may have recovered.
Yeah, well, it's Skill Shimano at the moment, just keeping the back of the peloton warm, but Cameron Meyer is the man on his own. You're looking here at a rider that's saturated with class. Bronze medal winner in the World Under-23 Time Trial Championship. So that tells us that he is a man comfortable settling down to a rhythm on his own. He's probably happier in a situation like this than being tucked in the wheels.
Yeah, it's very nice, easy style, and probably traveling at 50 kilometres an hour.
We've got another rider here that's gone clear of the peloton, trying to get up to him.
Looks like a Saxo Bank rider.
Yep. Looks like one of the riders from Saxo Bank, so a little bit of company for Meyer will be welcome. He can share the workload. Big effort here then to try and get across the gap. And in actual fact, that's Jaroslav Maric that's going to join him.
I think Cameron Myers just took a look over his shoulder, and quite happy to see a little bit of help coming his way.
One of the Polish riders in the field, Maric, and he's coming right up to the wheel of Meyer. Now they can settle down to share the workload evenly. A much better scenario than being out in front on your own.
Yes, but also it's 2 riders. It's a long way, an awful long way for just 2 riders to stay away from the peloton, and you have to think that maybe it's a good little move for the peloton, for those that are thinking that it might go for the sprint today.
Well, you saw the caption there, 60 seconds the advantage, but just to reinforce the comment we made earlier, trying to stay away from a peloton when they've got a tailwind is a very difficult ask indeed. And just to reinforce that comment, news has come through that in the first hour of racing today they covered 30.3 miles, Graham, so they're flying.
That's having said that, sometimes when they do have this sort of speed, it's good for the legs, and it doesn't take as much out of you. I mean, they've had 4 or 5 really tough days before this, and they'll be glad to be spinning the legs a little bit.
So that juicy ingredient we were looking for here, that's the crosswinds for the echelons, doesn't look as though it's going to happen, and instead they're enjoying that tailwind and high speed.
Yeah, I certainly did expect, I haven't seen the wind that was blowing in Kings Lynn this morning, I did expect to see a bit more echelon riding.
Not wanting to personalise it too much, but many years ago when I rode a stage from Nottingham to Skegness, there was a tailwind blowing all the way, and I think it was about 29 miles an hour then, so it's quite normal. So there he is, Maric at the front. 23 years of age, this Pole, national time trial champion. Now, neither of these riders can cause any problems to the yellow jersey, so if the HTC Colombia boys just decided to sit on the front and tap away, they're not going to be affected, because Mayer is 44th at 38 minutes. Maric, well, he's slightly better placed, 27th at 17 minutes 29 seconds. Look at the crowds, unbelievable.
Sheringham.
So they've really turned out force here in Sheringham.
The other thing about this, just having these two riders so far down overall, and the fact that it is a flat stage and tomorrow's a flat stage, HTC Colombia don't actually do any chasing whatsoever. It's down really to the teams who've got sprinters.
You can actually see that, can't you? Look at this, they're just pottering along nicely. Thank you very much. We can save our strength, it's not going to affect us. Yellow jersey's there, he's happy. Hoogland, King of the Mountains, well, he's equally as happy, talking to his teammate, his Vacances Soleil teammate there, so you are right. And the upshot of that is that the brace of riders that are clear are going further away.
Yeah, they're probably taking a little breather, having had such a fast, frenetic start, that they probably deserve a little bit of food, a little bit of take some bottles on board, and they'll start to probably start chasing this breakaway later.
Just the same as it was in the southwest, the school children have been given the opportunity to put the pens and books down and come to the roadside and support these athletes in the Tour of Britain.
Just in the right turn now towards Beacon Hill, or apparently, as I was told this morning, it's known as Roman Camp Hill, so that's another little name,
right.
Roman Camp Hill.
Yeah. A useful piece of news. Well, Beacon Hill, just like the previous climb of Burnham Deepdale, is another third cat, and there we are, they're just starting it. It's 4 points for first over the top, 3 for second, 2 for third, and 1 for fourth. It really isn't going to affect the overall standings here in the King of the Mountains, because the riders that have got a stranglehold on this are Hoogland from Richie Port. These two will pick up points, but it isn't going to affect the outcome. It's a picturesque setting for this ascent.
Yeah, it's a nice little climb. It comes up through the trees, a bit similar to Peak Hill the other day. It's sort of open at the bottom, and then you come through this almost like tunnel of forests and trees. It's a really nice climb.
Lunch break here at the head of the peloton. That looked like Grabsch, former world time trial champion from HTC. 3:30 the advantage, so it's creeping up nicely.
Yeah, actually went up pretty quickly, I suppose, when they all stopped to have a little bit of a break, and they can only see this breakaway just getting a bigger lead altogether here.
Well, they've covered about 50 miles when they get to the top of this climb. 118, remember, today's stage, the longest, so there'll be 68 miles left. Meyer still tapping away nicely, got a very good rhythm.
It's a very nice style, the sort of body almost completely still, and it's just the legs turning over nicely.
And of course his style is indicative of a classy track rider. He won 3 world titles on the speedy boards in Copenhagen earlier this year, and he's a man that's I feel got a big career ahead of him on the track, and he's certainly going to be a strong member of the Australian squad in the Commonwealth Games. So it's Meyer at the moment doing the work at the front, and Maric just tucked into the wheel.
Great crowds again on the climb of Beacon Hill as we come across the summit.
Meyer crossing the line first, Maric just behind him. And you are right, look at that. Fantastic setting.
Yeah, no real descent off this climb. We just sort of stay at the same level most of the time.
Well, the bunch still not too concerned about the escapees. But of course, the way it's building now, those two could deny the field an opportunity for a big sprint.
Yeah, but it's an awful long way to go yet.
Yes.
It's got, well, 70 miles almost still to go, so there's plenty of time to and opportunity to chase the breakaway down.
I know we have reinforced the point that it's difficult to stay away when there's a strong tailwind, but it is playing into the hands of the big team in the yellow jersey, so if they give them more and more space, who knows?
Yeah, and of course there's still the opportunity for this race to split. It does switch about now. We come up, once we come up this top of this hill, we do almost come right back on ourselves, turn into a headwind, and then we turn left with a crosswind.
Marriage taking a little bit of advice there from his manager. What do you think he'd be saying, Graham? Continue?
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe just giving him a little bit of advice on where the gap is, who's doing the chasing, whether anybody's likely to chase.
Yeah,
maybe what's coming up.
You are right. If a splinter group does form and picks up the two leaders, then they're still in with a very good chance, aren't they? There's confirmation of the result. The third spot going to the leader in the King of the Mountains, Hoogeland, from his teammate Leakhart. Well, Maya very keen to keep the pace high here, and the lead has stretched out to just over 5 minutes.
Yeah, we're in the outskirts of, well, actually on the ring road of Norwich now, coming up to the third sprint of the day. This is an uphill sprint.
And Team Sky now starting to take closer order here. They are trying to pull them back. That's the crouching style of Steve Cummings on the front.
Well, this is where HTC Colombia can benefit, the fact that they don't really have to chase this breakaway, and they're sort of like playing a little bit of poker and hoping that the other teams start to chase this breakaway down.
Well, they're actually getting an armchair ride today, aren't they? So this is a super move to help the yellow jersey.
Yeah, and of course with a weakened team of only 3 teammates to defend that yellow jersey, this every little bit can help.
So Team Sky must obviously be trying to pull them back with the hope that they can place Greg Henderson in with a chance of a sprint.
That's what I would think, and the points jersey's at stake as well.
Of course, Henderson's already had one stage victory when he won the uphill finish in Hanley, and that was stage 2. Today is a pan flat finish, so I think he may be stretched to try and outpace faster finishers, but you never know. Sky's plan, I would think, is to try and pull them back, set themselves up for a charge for the line.
Just coming up to the final few metres in the sprint. Not that there will be much of a sprint, it's more importantly to just make the pacemaking between, share the pacemaking between
Look
them.
at the crowds again here. It turned out in their thousands. Maya crosses the line first here in Norwich, just ahead of Marriage. But these crowds are, well, as big as you get in the Tour de France.
Yeah, fantastic run. And we go make a left turn here and we go right through the centre of Norwich today.
Norwich, of course, is a place that we've been to in the past for city centre races, and they were always really well supported there. It's the first time we've been here, of course, in the Tour of Britain. So it's Team Sky still at the front. Vacon Soleil starting to come through there as well. Now, are we likely to see Vacon Soleil assisting Sky?
Well, I don't think Vacon Soleil will assist us. They'll be looking more to attack and looking for the right opportunity.
Welcome back, and you're looking at the two leaders still threading their way through the streets of Norwich, and the roads are completely closed.
Yeah, the local authorities have done a great job helping us come through Norwich and keep getting all these roads shut down. It's been fantastic.
Well, there are still points available in this third intermediate sprint. The man on the front is the current overall leader in that competition, Michael Golas of the Vacon Soleil team. And he's got a teammate in his wheel as well to try and help him. And then there are 2 riders from Team Sky just behind.
This is the 2 leaders heading out of Norwich now. They do the left-hand turn, and of course we've got the third and final climb coming up.
And once they've left Norwich, 86 miles under the wheels, and it will mean that they have got 32 miles of racing left. 32 fast speedy miles as well, because it's flat.
And they'll also have that very strong tailwind behind them again.
And it's Wouter Poels on the front here, the man that led the King of the Mountains after stage 1, doing a good team job here. The overall leader in the intermediate sprint competition, and that of course is Michael Golas. And Michael Golas, there he is in 4th position, just sitting in the wheel of the Team Sky Rider.
Yeah, it's Steve Cummings and Heyman just sitting in 2nd and 3rd place there. Obviously thinking they have been doing a little bit of the pacemaking ahead of the peloton, and I think after this sprint through, whether we're going to see them on the front again.
Well, Meyer and his breakaway companion there getting very close to the final climb. In fact, they've just crossed the sign there, and this is Mousehole Heath, another 3rd category ascent.
Yeah, it's a fairly gentle climb, still about 1.5 kilometres long, and fairly even gradient, probably about 1 in 12, something like that.
So nothing to stall them. In fact, they can still keep the pace high. Now, this is the head of the peloton. They're getting closer to the line in this 3rd final counter in the intermediate sprint competition. And it looks like the boys from Sky are quite happy to keep building the tempo up.
Yeah, meanwhile, these 2 guys in front still working well together. Mayer making most of the pacemaking on the climbs.
That's Heyman and Cummings. And I tell you what, they look to have the race faces on here. I'm just wondering if Sky are going to really try and close this down. They do need another stage victory from this race.
Yeah, well, it's perfect terrain from the top of this final climb all the way to the finish for a peloton to really close down on a breakaway. And seeing it's only two riders in that breakaway, it should be fairly chaseable for them.
Here's an attack on the left-hand side of the road. This is Richie Port. Remember, he was leading this competition for a long time and then finally surrendered that lead to Michael Golas. So Port picks up 2 points there and Golas gets the 1. So the Aussie still keen to try and nibble away at the lead held by the Vacances Soleil rider.
Yeah, may well have 1 or 2 decent little sprints tomorrow along the race.
Well, just wondering how much longer these 2 are going to enjoy their freedom. Well, it's coming down, Graham, 4 minutes 58 seconds, and it was as high as 7 minutes at one point.
Well, that just shows that the tempo that Sky was setting at the front of the peloton for the last few kilometres has had an effect.
So they are beginning to organise themselves, and obviously they are going to try and limit the gains of the 2 riders ahead. Still Port dangling off the front, and Golas in his wheel, but the rest of the peloton just coming up now to make the junction, and Team Sky looks set to sweep through keep the pressure applied.
Yeah, it's still Heyman and Cummings that have been pushed to the front of the peloton to do all this work.
Heyman, Commonwealth Games gold medal winner in the road race when it was held in Melbourne in 2006, and of course Cummings is a man that's finished runner-up in the Tour of Britain when he finished in Liverpool. But the crowds, look at the size of the crowds here, massive as they crest the top of the 3rd and final climb. Meyer getting the 4 points and Maric the 3.
Yeah, it's still Meyer that's doing all the work on the climbs, and it's only when we've gone over the top that Maric seems to do his share of the pacemaking.
Now we've got to start to really speculate on the possibility of these 2 making it to the line, haven't we? You've seen already that the advantage is beginning to crumble. They've got 30 miles of racing left and the odds are stacked against them.
It is very much so. You see the peloton just coming through the centre of Norwich and coming out towards Mousehole Heath climb.
So I would think if they do sweep them up, then we've got to start to look at who are going to be the really big sprinters to snap the stage up. And having seen the performance of Andre Greipel on a flat sprint in Blackpool, this is not too dissimilar to that one, and probably the same length of finishing funnel.
Yeah, it's probably it's a good point there. That's a straight run into the finish. It's just a couple of corners, but it is an awful long, nice finishing straight.
But it's Steve Cummings at the moment, just dangling off the front. Really keen to get on with this. He's obviously received instructions from the team car to close this one down. And Cummings, such a talented bike rider, another man from a track background, and of course he is a man that has the speed in the legs to start to do some damage.
Yeah, and Blackpool just showing 5 minutes still.
So it's pegged, isn't it?
It is. They've done exactly what they needed. They've pegged it and kept it at a reasonable distance, or a chaseable distance.
Well, they've been away for about 50 miles now, and they're still making a fist of it. In fact, they've got the field under the cosh at the moment. Vacances Soleil still at the front. I mean, they're having a superb Tour of Britain here, aren't they? They're the overall team leaders. They've got the leader in the King of the Mountains and the leader in the intermediate sprint competition.
Yeah, it's not quite developed today. I thought we might have seen a little bit more action today, but the winds just haven't worked out that way, and they've been in the right direction to really do some attacking. But it could well happen tomorrow.
It could. Still these two quite happy then to keep the pace as high as possible. 5 minutes advantage. Now then, is that going to be enough? That's a question you've got to ask yourself. But when you think back, Meyer had an unbelievable go, didn't he, trying to win a stage in Swansea. He was picked up literally as he approached the finishing line to start the concluding loop.
Yeah, done a great ride that day, and it was only really the strength of the HTC Colombia riders, Tony Martin and Albacini, that prevented him from probably going on to win that stage.
And I've been flagging up his track prowess. Let's not forget he's an overall winner of the Tour of Japan and Tasmania. And you can see Bradley Wiggins has now come through as well, lying second. So Wiggins is going to start to inject some pace.
Yeah, certainly like he's had his go yesterday. I mean, it may not be the last time we see Bradley Wiggins trying to have a go for a stage win, but he's up now devoting his sort of attention to maybe trying to help Greg Henderson win the stage.
Yeah, well, it would be a popular victory, that's for certain. Well, you're looking at the leader on the intermediate sprint competition, third back, and he's done plenty of good work again today. So when he arrives at the finish, he will collect that jersey as the overall leader. 27 points he will have amassed, and of course that cushion of advantage for him over Richie Porte is 9.
Yeah, the peloton still on the final climb, and Matthew Heyman still doing an awful lot of work, but Bradley Wiggins just sitting in there. But I think Bradley will probably be the one that maybe does a lot of the work on the flat, high speed.
And Greg Henderson will be enjoying a nice ride in the wheels, trying to conserve his energy for that final burst for the line. So still lined out here on the front, and you can see the thin line is beginning to form behind, which is always a telltale sign that the speed is increasing.
It certainly is. You just see one or two little gaps opening, but it shows you that riders are in a little bit of difficulty.
Peloton further back, still bunching fractionally, but the major part here of the bunch you can see all lined out. It's fragmenting a little bit towards the back as Hoogland, the leader of the King of the Mountains, now comes through. So it's looking like Vacan Soleil and Team Sky are the squads that want to really raise the pace here.
I think Hoogland's just looking to take some points, isn't he?
Yep, but I mean, he's looking good on all the climbs, isn't he? Past winner of the King of the Mountains in the Tour of Poland, but he's been passed by Bradley Wiggins. And Wiggins, who was second on the stage yesterday, gives a bit of a victory wave there to the crowd, and he finishes third on that climb to get 2 points. He isn't contesting the classification there, but it showed he's got the good legs on. Johnny Hoogland picking up another 1 point to add to his tally. So the climbs are behind them. The intermediate sprints have now been polished off. Now they can set themselves fair for the run to Great Yarmouth. Well, welcome back, and you can see that the lead is just over a minute, and it's falling. And the race now is in an angry mood as the peloton are beginning to try and chase down the two leaders.
Yeah, Steve Cummings and Team Sky still doing all the pacemaking, trying to prepare the sprint for Greg Henderson.
It's still Cameron Meyer of Australia and the Garmin team and Yaroslav Maric that are holding the advantage here. But the power of the peloton behind, you can see, is cutting the time down with every pedal rev. You really have got to start to speculate on how much longer can they.
But it's going to be very difficult now with the peloton moving at this speed, and it's Vacan Soleil also doing a lot of the work.
So the fancy teams are right there on the head of the peloton. This is the sharp end then of stage 6 as we're making our way ever nearer now to Great Yarmouth.
Yeah, 43 seconds the blackboard showing, so it is coming down very quickly.
Meyer gritting his teeth, coming forward onto the peak of the saddle in that last shot. That's a telltale sign that he really is beginning to hurt, and riders clinging to the back of the field.
Also a telltale sign, you saw the Garmin team car at the side of the road. That's obviously been pulled out by the commissaires.
And problems for Yaroslav Maric. Well, he's lost contact. Now Cameron Meyer in exactly the same position as he was in the stage finish in Swansea. He's on his own, and he is going to persist.
Oh, it's really just holding that. It's 10 metres. Must be very painful just sort of seeing Maya just pull away from him.
Well, the trouble with the approach to the finish here, there are one or two opportunities where the peloton may just be able to see the leader.
Well, they can already see them there. He's looking back over his shoulder, just going up the little over the railway bridge there, along past the racecourse.
Well, one or two riders really struggling now to stay on the pace, and it's a matter of how long can this man stay out in front. He really has got the race face on, forward on the peak of the saddle, the telltale sign that it is hurting.
Yeah, he's got to give it everything now. I mean, he's got to keep his head down, not look back. Gap down to 23 seconds.
Only 23 seconds, as you say, Graham. Well, the field must have him now firmly in their sights. This is going to be so demoralising. He has once again tried to clinch a stage victory, but they are literally eating up the metres between themselves and, of course, the flying Australian.
He's coming into the centre of Great Yarmouth now. He's just going to do a right-hander, and before the long loop round, it's about over 3 kilometres to go here, and long loop round before left-hander and another left-hander into the finishing straight.
So near and yet so far. 12 seconds. Well, this is nail-biting stuff. Riveting action here in the concluding stages of this run down to Great Yarmouth. He will not give in. He will not lie down.
No, he's not going to give in, that's for sure. And it is doable, but I think it's highly unlikely, and I do expect to see a big bunch sprint come in.
Well, crowds standing at the side of the road here being treated to a first-class scrap. The Garmin man takes the left and the right turn, getting ever nearer to the finish. 3 kilometres to go.
Peloton just coming past the 3 kilometres to go sign as well, so it just shows you how small that gap is now.
Well, he's still motivated to try and clinch the victory. He's not going to lie down, that's for sure.
That's Bradley Wiggins. He's done his turn. Oh, Grant Thomas as well out the back of the peloton, just rolling in.
Well, these are riders that will not be contesting the sprint down the front. But is it going to be a sprint, or is he going to stay out in front? There they are coming up now. Well, they're going to sweep him up.
Well, it looks like there's been a little bit of hesitation there, just a slight bunching up. So he's just got over 2 kilometres to go, and it's he's got to give it everything. He's got about 1 kilometre. It's a very straight road before there's 2 left-handers in the final kilometre.
It's so frustrating, isn't it? At one point with the lead he had, he must have thought, yes, I'm going to do it today. But now, you just cannot imagine what must be going through his mind. 2 kilometres left.
Oh, well, it's going to be very close. Oh, and you can see the peloton now. It must only be about 8 seconds.
What would be going through his mind, Graham? I mean, you've done a similar thing to that. He must be demoralised.
Well, yes, I mean, he's got to give it everything. You just never know, but, you know, there could be an incident in the peloton, but I think he thinks he's, probably deep down he knows he's going to get caught.
I mean, we've seen similar things to this in the Tour de France, haven't we? Riders have literally managed to stay out in front till 50 metres to go, and they've been passed.
Yeah, and I've also seen the breakaway actually stay away and be given the same time as the peloton. It's been that close.
He's looking back, isn't he? As much as to say, now who is going to be the first to catch me?
Well, it's HEC Colombia lining up. They've the stage has played into their hands a little bit. They've not had to do any work, so they can prepare the sprint.
It looks as though he's going to stop. He's looking back as much as to say, well, I know I'm caught, but no, yes, he has. He's finally given up, he's surrendered, he knows he cannot keep the field away any longer. And it is Vacon Soleil right on the front here, and HTC Colombia, as you say. Now HTC Colombia must be surely trying to set this up for Andre Greipel. He won stage 1 in Blackpool, and this kind of finish will suit him. Inside 1 kilometre to go.
Yeah, just got one more corner now before the finish, and 600 metres to the line.
Well, the Vacon Soleil boys will be trying to set this up for Bosic because he's well placed in the overall classification, and on the line it's 10 seconds for first, 6 for second, and so either of those bonuses would be very, very useful indeed. Well, nobody's in the comfort zone, that's for sure. Vacon Soleil are trying to organise their lead out, and so are HTC Colombia.
Also got Greg Henderson in there somewhere.
Well, Russell Downing's in the shake-up as well for Team Sky, so he may well be trying to position himself to give Henderson the lead out. It is a very, very long sprint, this, and it's all about timing your effort to perfection. If you go too early, then your legs are surely going to buckle. But the big men now are beginning to gather themselves. They are nearing the line, and Henderson in the white jersey is the points leader. Hits the front. Can he hold off the challenge from Greipel? Greipel of HTC Colombia coming through. He's going to take his second stage victory of the tour. Greipel hits the line first. Bosic of Vaconsoleil second, and Haydo of Team Saxo Bank third. The effort by Henderson, well, that gave him fourth place on the stage. It was a gallop. What a charge for the line that was.
Yeah, fantastic sprint by Greipel. Just proves that he is one of the fastest sprinters in the world, and maybe there's only one rider faster than him in the world.
Here's a chance to look at it again, Graham. Well, Henderson on the right had the lead, but the power of Greipel, well, nobody could match that. And that's the third stage victory for HTC Colombia in this race. And that's how close it was on the line. About a bike length.
Something about the seaside air. For Blackpool, read Great Yarmouth. Andre Greipel, the proven class act in the sprinters' field. And for once, HTC Colombia had someone else to do the work for them.
I can tell you, first 75 kilometers, we were all on block, and we had to go full gas. We had to chase breakaways down. That we have to be sure that we keep the yellow jersey, and we are just 4 riders. So we were happy with 2 riders breakaway, and yeah, at the end we didn't need to work. We could save a little bit of energy, what we have left for the final.
The big German then, in the colours of Colombia, on show to the good people of Norfolk for the first time today, but not the last. Here's the top 10 on the day then. Vaconsoleil's Borut Bosic finished runner-up. Greg Henderson managed 4th. Ed Clancy, visible for the first time on this race, edging onto the table in 10th. A sign of things to come, perhaps, for him as the London circuit beckons. Dan Martin, by the way, did not start. Then, nearly 4 minutes down, the home crowd cheered home Bradley Wiggins and Geraint Thomas, who'd popped off the back after another long, hard chase. The sprint competition is still led by Michael Golas of Vaconsoleil, who picked up 3 points more than Richie Porte and now leads by 9. And the King of the Mountains jersey is still worn by his teammate Johnny Hoogerland, also 9 points clear of the same man, Richie Porte. And for the 4th day in a row, Michael Albacini wears the yellow jersey on the podium, almost managing a smile despite his frail condition.
I feel better, definitely, but at the end I was also a little bit tired, but I can't eat, sugar. So I didn't have so much energy for the finish, but it was enough, so I'm very happy to be again in the yellow jersey.
Minor tweaks then to GC. Albacini now leads the race by 1:26 from Borut Bosic, who picked up a 6-second bonus on the finish line to leapfrog Richie Porte. Greg Henderson picked up 3 seconds but remains in 4th by only 4 seconds now to the ever-aggressive Johnny Hoogerland. Only 11 seconds separate places 2 to 5. The podium battle will be intense.
I'll keep fighting to the end, it's supposed to be flatter again stages now till the finish, and I've just got to keep trying and pick up bonus seconds to try and to move up onto the podium in the overall, and that's what Dave Brailsford and Shane Sutton want me to do, so I'll keep trying.
Well, after a few very complicated stages which have seriously tested our powers of analysis here, Dean, that was a bit more simple, wasn't it?
Very simple, yeah. 2-man breakaway, gradually reeled in by Team Sky.
Now, what about the crosswinds that we flagged up earlier? Team Sky tried to take advantage of them, didn't they?
Yeah, we didn't get that right, and Team Sky sadly had a following wind, so speaking to Shane Sutton, that was their plan. Following wind, everybody sits on Team Sky.
They put in a hell of a shift again today, didn't they? And I believe you got an update on Geraint Thomas's condition. We saw him coming in a bit detached alongside Wiggins from the peloton today.
Yeah, he was a few seconds behind, but yeah, sadly Shane Sutton tells me that he's got the same as what Albacini had yesterday, so not good.
All right, there's a bit of it about, the less said about that perhaps the better. Now, what about their tactics today? Because they've asked a lot of Greg Henderson. They've asked him to sprint for intermediate time bonuses, to move himself up in the GC, but also try and ride out a stage win, and you know exactly how hard that can be.
It's very difficult. Mark Cavendish doesn't do it in the Tour de France, so Greg Henderson's asking a lot of himself. Chipped away at some seconds in the intermediates, but sadly came short with the 4th place. So he'll be hoping. They're trying to get a podium in this race. Shane said to me, we're going to go down fighting, so that's good.
Yeah, it's good to see. You can't fault their aggression. But just very briefly then, you talked about Mark Cavendish, the world's best sprinter. Is Andre Greipel the world's second best sprinter?
Maybe, but definitely next year we will find out. They're going to be competitors, so that'll be great.
A head-to-head to look forward to. More head-to-heads out on the road tomorrow when the Tour of Britain goes into stage 7 from Bury St Edmunds to Colchester. We're back at the normal time tomorrow of 7 p.m. See you then.